Hi, everyone. I think we're live. And I just want to get a thumbs up that everyone can hear me here. Welcome to the first DevTalks hosted by SambaNova. I've got Shane over here from CrewAI joining us. We're going to talk about designing effective AI agents with CrewAI. This is our first inaugural DevTalks powered by SambaNova. And I want to thank everyone for attending here live. We're going to keep it pretty short. We're going to do some interactive demos. I'm going to talk about something. Shane's going to talk about something. We're going to do some workshop style demo code that we can go through an AI agent. But before I get started, I don't know in the chat if anyone can say where they're from. I'm in Palo Alto right now. I'd love to hear where people are from. If not, that's fine. But thank you everyone for joining. And then yeah, let's just go ahead and get started then. So, and New York City, fantastic. Thanks for joining us in New York City. All right, so here's the agenda for today. I'm going to do a little short welcome to DevTalks, introductions really quick. I'm going to talk a little about SambaNova, who we are, what we do, and then sort of how it fits in with CrewAI. Shane's actually going to talk a little bit about CrewAI, and then we're going to do a CrewAI and SambaNova demo that really showcases the power of SambaNova along with CrewAI's agentic framework and how you can go back and immediately build your own AI agents, crew that interact together and then solve real world problems. I see people in from Amsterdam, Toronto, Germany, Turkey, Jakarta, Indonesia. That's fantastic. Thanks everyone for attending. Keep that coming. I love how international our webinar is. And I don't even know what time it is. It's 10 a.m. here for me in Palo Alto. I can't even imagine what time it is in some of these places, but thank you so much for attending this and really welcome. Hopefully you get a lot out of this quick and short interactive webinar. All right, so just a little bit about me here. Give me 1 second here. While I talk about me, I'm going to move Shane on the stage and I'm going to bring him back on later on doing his part. I'm Justin Wu. I'm a developer advocate at SambaNova. This is my email, Twitter, and then LinkedIn. I'm a Python developer. I love playing Settlers of Catan a lot. That's my wife and 2 dogs. I also originally from Singapore, although I live in Palo Alto right now. And I play a lot of pickleball. So those people who are pickleball fans or Catan fans, feel free to ping me. Let me know. And hopefully one day we can get a game of either one, or maybe both at the same time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about SambaNova for those who are new here. And I assume many people already hopefully know about SambaNova. But what we do is we produce an AI chip called an RDU that powers the SambaNova platform. It really has 2 key innovations that make the best chip for AI inference. First is this Dataflow architecture that makes it more efficient than GPUs for inference. The extreme efficiency of the Dataflow architecture is what makes it possible for the SambaNova system to deliver exceptional performance with very low power consumption. And you see that the speed of the inference we do is what's really key, and the efficiency behind it. The second is this 3-tier memory design that enables our ability to support both large models and multiple models on a single node. So this helps with efficiency and speed and processing really quickly. The SRAM itself is a very fast memory that runs the model with lightning speed. And then you can see here on our speed comparison compared to GPUs, we not only deliver exceptional performance across a range of different models, but comparing SambaNova Cloud, Samba Cloud to NVIDIA GPU-based systems, just from a benchmark from artificial analysis, you can see that SambaNova is roughly 10x faster than GPU inference. This level of performance is not only a simple speed difference, it also unlocks capabilities that might otherwise be impossible to achieve just with speed itself. And I'll show you a demo in a second. So really quickly, the reason why I love partnering with CrewAI and this whole thing around AI agentic systems is because we see that, as AI applications evolve, well, we see it from a simple chatbot to like a knowledge assistant. And then, as chain of thought came about with reasoning tokens, more thinking behind it, we now come across this agentic system where multiple agents talk together to come up with a complete answer. And I think what you can see is that the number of tokens generated per query and the complexity of this query has increased exponentially. And now we're seeing up to like 10x or 100x more tokens generated per query based on these AI applications. And the number of models we're using has increased from like 1 to like 5 to 10. And the power of CrewAI later on, Shane's going to talk about that, is really bringing these different AI agents and models together to work together to come up with a more complete answer. And with these number of tokens generated, speed and efficiency really, really matters. So I'm going to show you a really quick demo here on the speed of SambaNova. So for those who are new, just coming along, you can always go to SambaNova.ai here, right? And then, if you hit start building, you go into our playground really, really quickly. So it's really easy to get a hold of that. And here I'm going to choose my favorite model, DeepSeek v3.1 Terminus. Actually, I've got it here in a tab here. And then I'm going to actually do a speed comparison with, the most famous, one of the most famous AI models out there, ChatGPT here. I'm actually going to do it side by side here. Actually, I apologize for my screen. I'm going to go ahead. Sorry about that. I'm actually going to go ahead and share my my screen instead of my tabs, just so that you can see the comparison here. Give me 1 second while I do that. Here, sorry about that. 1 second. Great, sorry about that. I'm just going to share my window actually here. While we do. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to just showcase SambaNova next to ChatGPT. But if we can't do that, we can just do that in separate tabs. And I'm going to do that really quickly here. Okay, I got it here. Sorry about that little difference down there. But I really wanted to do just a side-by-side comparison of ChatGPT and SambaNova. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to do a simple query here saying, hey, make me a simple Space Invaders game in HTML. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to give ChatGPT a head start here. And then you can really see the speed here. So that's ChatGPT. Again, I just went to chatgpt.com to do that. And then now it's running its inferences tokens. And again, I've done simple settings here for DeepSeek. I'm actually just going to run it here. And you can see as ChatGPT is still coming up with it, like that's the speed and power of SambaNova. It's almost completed while ChatGPT is still running. So here you can see that just how much more faster it is. And then we've already completed our Space Invaders game here. And then I can't even go as fast as it can run here. And we've already got that. And then ChatGPT has run that completely too. So you can see that we've generated so many more tokens at a speed of over 100 tokens per second. And then the time to first token is less than a second there. So with that speed, and then, just for comparison here, I can just go ahead and copy in this code here. And then, just like run it in, I'm just going to go here. I had that up just now here, but like CodePen, just to see completeness that it is not only fast, but accurate too. So you can go in here and then just copy and paste the code. And then we can see the Space Invaders game here where, so not only is it fast, but it's accurate too. And I really encourage you to go ahead and try this at home and see the speed comparison between ChatGPT and then SambaNova, and you see how fast we are and how accurate we can be with our open source models there. Great. So with that, I'm actually going to bring Shane back to the stage here and then allow him to talk a little bit about CrewAI. Give me 1 second here.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm glad I could be here today. So yeah, let's talk agents for just a little bit, and then we'll get to, I think, the really good stuff, which is the demo that Justin will walk us through. So bear with me as I walk you through maybe some less exciting stuff until we get to the demo here. So let's do a little share. All right. You sharing okay? My screen, it looks like it's trying.
Yeah,
oh, there it
now
goes.
It's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
CrewAI. So let's kind of get in here a little bit. The way I tend to think about it when I start talking to folks about agents and kind of how we got here is everything started with early on ChatGPT comes around, right? We're all super excited about a chatbot, right? And they're typically a single agent and general purpose, right? It's kind of gobbled up all of the knowledge that's currently available on the internet, and you can ask it questions and ask to generate stuff. And I found that from a professional perspective, the most common thing is kind of this top-down mandate of, hey, everyone start using AI to help you with your job, right? Whether it's to write an email or to answer a question or to get some ideas. So great, pretty narrow in scope. Phase two, this is really where I lived at my previous AI startup. And I think this notion of assistants and co-pilots, virtually all of them built with RAG, was kind of dominating the space at that time. Lots of enterprises kind of came to the conclusion that, as great as these models are, they need access to our domain and business knowledge in order for us to use them effectively internally. Whether that means, answering customer support questions, do something, for example, I know a lot of banks now, right, have AI assistants that you can ask them to check your balance or transfer money or, do various things. When I think about co-pilots, think Cursor, probably a great example. These tend to be, not always, tend to be still single agent, sometimes multi-agent. There might be 2 or 3 agents under the covers, very domain specific. So that's why everyone kind of had to build their own. Is that it's not really an environment where one single assistant can be deployed by any company out there. And a very strong sense of employee productivity, particularly when you think about internal co-pilots, right? They were building these to help employees be more efficient, whether it meant extracting information from huge financial statements, or asking questions about patient records and doctor notes, right? Lots and lots and lots of information, sometimes very dense, sometimes very complex. And typically the people that worked with those could often spend hours or even days. So if we can able to ask an AI assistant to do that for us, all the better. Where I live today is around the concept of agentic workflows. And the bigger differences here, one is that it's multiple agents and sometimes many agents. It's very rarely solved with a single agent now. The whole idea is to build specialized agents that are a reflection of the real world. If you have a marketing team, you might have someone that does demand generation, someone that manages ads, someone that does product marketing. You have all these different roles. And the same is true for sales or operations or HR, right? You can pick your function, engineering. They tend to be more oriented towards processes and tasks, kind of in the repeatable sense, right? Things that typically require a lot of tools, a lot of people, a lot of steps, a high degree of complexity, right? These are the areas that we're looking at. How can we automate these with agents? And down at the bottom, I think some of the bigger things are they're delivering the most value when they're autonomous. Unlike a chatbot, which waits for you to ask it to do something, agentic workflows and agents in general can be proactive and basically respond to environmental changes and take actions on your behalf. So there's a high degree of autonomy there. And we're really talking about business transformation, right? It's not just simply, improving a single person's individually or helping them save 15 or 20 minutes there. Organizations are looking at agents at a much, much grander scale. If we get into how we think about AI here, 3 phases. The first phase is everyone wants to get started and do this as quickly as possible. And that typically means, how can I build agents, right? And workflows that enable agents to collaborate, right? How can I integrate all my tools, whether that's Gmail or Notion or Linear or HubSpot, Salesforce, you pick your enterprise app. So the agents can use those. And that's usually where a lot of people spend most of their time. Certainly where a lot of the excitement is here today. But then that second phase is, how can we come to trust these agents, especially if we're delegating increasingly important tasks to them. And that's where we need the ability to observe and optimize, right? We need transparency. We need to understand, why are our agents taking the actions that they are, right? How are they coming to the decisions that they are? And if they're coming up short, how can we train them to produce better outcomes in the future? And then that third phase is where the ROI explodes, which is managing and scale, right? Everyone often starts with a single use case or a single prototype, but the organizations that are most benefit from agents are deploying hundreds of agents across every department or team, right? In our case, we have a customer who's literally deploying agents globally in almost every country on the planet. And that's when it really becomes a big deal. The orchestration, believe it or not, is valuable as it is. It's kind of a foundational element that kind of we bring to you. And then we focus on what you do on top of that orchestration, which is building, observing, and managing. A quick look at it. If we're not going to be able to go into all these details here, but hopefully there's little things that can stand out to you. Orchestration is fairly straightforward. There's a number of frameworks out there. And that's when we're trying to get agents to plan, to reason, providing access to short and long-term memory, knowledge, right? There's still RAG, right? We still want to retrieve information from vector databases, but it's those building blocks up top where we have a stronger emphasis in terms of, visual editors, built-in tools, tracing these workflows to understand what agents were involved, what steps they perform, what tools they use, what were the inputs, the outputs, even training those agents so they can produce better results the next time around. And then a lot of that stuff on top is about how do we manage a large number of agents and how do we scale adoption across an organization. And sometimes that can be things like RBAC, right? Security is exceedingly important. Or it could be something like agent and tool repositories, where instead of different teams building agentic workflows and more often not actually building the same agents or the same tools, let's centralize those in private repositories, right? That the organization can share amongst each other. And so if I kind of, I'm trying to be quick here because I want to get to the demo, which is the best part. But what you see there is a little bit of a preview of what Justin's going to show us in a minute, and that the visual editor is a very powerful tool in terms of getting started. You can build, collaborative agents with very sophisticated, if not complex tasks visually, right, without writing a lot of code. Although on the flip side, we do have APIs. So everything that you see here visually can be done, from engineers directly with APIs. Tracing, which I think we're going to take probably a little bit of a look at, and then certainly, deployment, whether it's through GitHub or other Git repositories, zip files, the studio interface you're looking at, different ways of actually getting into production. And then I wanted to spend just 1 minute because I really like this success story with General Assembly. And so they do education, kind of think of training and learning programs. And so they had a whole team in-house that's responsible for building these training programs and all the content around them. And of course, that requires a fair amount of work, right, across the board. And so like a lot of folks that are starting to look at agents, how can we save time? How can we focus on more important things that really require our knowledge and our experience? How can we deliver more consistent results? And so when they chose to CrewAI, that middle column there, the content generation crew, that actually maps one-to-one with the people on their team. So they had an instructional architect, right? They had a QA person, they have SMEs, and then they have what they call learning experience designers. And so they actually created agents that are essentially a reflection of these roles. And they play the same, they perform the same tasks with the same expectations. And they were able to accelerate this. You can see a 90% reduction in the development time for these lessons. So they're still involved, but now they can focus on more important, right, the critical aspects of this and relay an agent to a lot of the work for them. The surprise for me in terms of the results was the burnout, which I hadn't really thought about. But for folks, especially if you're working for a startup like Justin and I, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of things to do, a few people, a few hours to do them. And so it's not just the the corporate speak, right? Oh, we're more efficient, we're more productive. But on a human level, I've been able to free up, some of that time, right? I now have, for lack of a better word, my own assistants who I can delegate work to, and then I can step in, right? Make some final changes, make some adjustments, but it's saving me a lot of time. The only point here, you can run it on our cloud, you can run it on your cloud, right? It's completely flexible, that notion. And then just a recap of the things that you should be thinking about, as we start to talk about agents. How do you go about building them, right? How do you go about integrating tools? Triggers I'm particularly excited about because of the autonomy, right? I don't want to have to chat with my workflows. I'd rather that the agents just took action on their own, and that's what the triggers are for. And certainly tracing, right? Guardrails. You're probably going to apply some protection. You make sure that your agents aren't stepping out of line, whether that means using, inappropriate language or sharing sensitive information. You probably have your own rules, in place with that. Human in the loop feedback. So as much as I love autonomous agents, there are of course scenarios where humans have to be involved. So the notion that an agent might perform a task, but then it might wait until it gets feedback from a human, which it can use to either repeat that task or help it, guide it with the next task. And so lots of other capabilities. Again, I want to go through all of these with you, but I just wanted to give you an idea of, what's the totality? What does it mean to embrace agents on a very large scale and transform your business, right? What are the types of features, the types of capabilities, the people and the roles? How do you think about it? So I know that was super fast, but hopefully that gave you kind of a first insight into this notion of agents. And now we can get to the really good stuff, which is seeing some of this in action with Justin.
Great, thanks, Shane. Yeah, I'm very excited to show CrewAI and how SambaNova works together with it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen here, my window right there. Great. Okay, so I think we can all see this right now. And actually, what I'm going to do, okay. So the first thing is, we're actually gonna, and I encourage everyone to follow along too. Shane and CrewAI has put together this really cool workshop that I'm gonna take just a little part from it, but I'm gonna put the Google Docs here into the chat. Now, I think you can just sort of copy and paste that in there. It's a public document. So feel free to follow along. I'm only going to take the first section of that and demonstrate that, but you can use this to actually get a very familiar idea with the things that Shane talked about, the triggers, the integrations and example code down there. All right, so the great thing about CrewAI here is that it's so simple for me. I mean, like it's just so simple to use. You can just like sign, of course, you just sign in here and immediately you can get started here. So what I like to do here, see how CrewAI works here. I like to skip and explore my own here. And of course, you can use any of those. So what I'm going to do actually is take in the prompt here from the workshop, the document I gave in here. And this is a really great example prompt that Shane has put together, which is really creating a list of top 3 products in a particular category. So the first step is to identify the products within the category. The second step is to research the products. And then after that, it's go ahead and compile those together, search for the internet, and then do a comparison, and then compile a report for that you can do. So I'm actually going to put this automation here as a prompt into what I want to build here in CrewAI here. And again, this is pretty elaborate, and I think I found, and Shane, feel free to interrupt me here, but I found like the more detailed the prompt, the better it is. The more you describe on what you wanted to do, the better CrewAI comes up with the AI.
I mean, you could put in, something as short as a few sentences, but in practice, the more detailed instructions you provide, the agents perform. And I would say this is still in the middle of the spectrum.
Wow.
So for me, I was building a product marketing crew, which was able to do competitive research and assessment.
Wow.
And the more time I spent on it, the more I had to elaborate, because ultimately, and I think it's probably true for all of us, I wanted the agents to perform a competitive analysis the same way I would when I do it manually. And that isn't always the case when you delegate to the LLMs, because they have their own assumptions and all this stuff that goes in there. So this part, when I do it for real for myself, I'll start here. But when we get into the agents a little bit, I'll go in and I'll actually be even more detailed on those agent roles, on those task descriptions, down to, I want you to search Reddit, for sentiment. I want you to find patterns of features that are known to have issues or not, like you. And the more specific I am, it gets to the point where it's amazing. It can literally do an analysis that's almost identical to what I would do over the course of 3 days.
Wow.
So yeah, sorry to go on and on, but I'd say
I love that.
In the middle of the road. If you're
I love that.
around, put in a few sentences. That's enough to get it started. But the
I
more
love that.
you add, the closer you're going to get to a production system.
I love that. So the takeaway really is you can put in, and that's what I love about CrewAI. You can put in anything you want in here. You can just start with something and then iterate upon it later on. Yeah, that's amazing. And so again, I just hit go. I just love this. Like, you go in there and then it just builds the automation workflow for you. It's on the left side. You can see it thinking. And I love seeing the magic behind how it comes up with the different agents based on your prompt here. So it's come up and it's, and so it comes out market research specialist here, a product analysis expert based on that prompt, and then a customer sentiment researcher. Product evaluation analyst. And you can see that this is all real time, guys, a real time demo. Like, this is not canned. I sent it to CrewAI and it came up with all of this for me here. And Shane, I'm just excited about Shane. Interrupt me anytime here. But for me, when I'm coming up with AI agents, at least by myself, without the CrewAI AMP platform, the backstory, which we all know as AI agents, that the system prompt, the backstory is important. And for me, sometimes I have a difficult time coming up with that system prompt or that backstory, like here. And the great thing I love about CrewAI AMP is that it comes out for me. Like, it already is taking that prompt and gave me like a really good starting point for that system prompt. And we've already got comments here on the chat here, like, it's great, better than NAN. Yeah, like if you use other platforms, like this backstory and these agents, you need to create yourself. And like, it's just the cognitive load for me is like, it's high.
Yeah, and I think you still described the right way, though. I would still consider this a starting point. I mean, listen, if you put in a prompt and it generates a perfect crew for you and you can launch it, fantastic. But realistically, you're probably going to want to look at these task descriptions. You're probably going to find places where you can be a little bit more specific, or maybe the interpretation wasn't exactly what you had in mind. So you had a little clarification. But to me, that's kind of the great thing about this approach, is that it's super easy to go in and be like, well, maybe I want the top 5 products instead of top 3, or maybe I should tell it to look at Reddit, but also Stack Overflow too. So you can do these little changes and then see, you're going to show us, and then in real time see what that effect is. And at the end of the day, I know people ask this a lot, is that you can export the code for this too. So this is a UI that generates all that kind of the scaffolding and all the core code and configuration for you. But for all the users out there that are engineers and developers, you can export this as a Python project and go wild with it if you really want to.
And then run it, huh? We had one question here in the chat. I just want to make sure. So I want to clarify just so that people can follow along with us, because I think this demo is so interactive. I think somebody asked, Ferris, thank you. He said, how do I access as a CrewAI developer? It really is, you go to crewai.com, and if you hit sign in, there's no requested demo. If you hit sign in, you should be able to just sign in with your Google account and then just get started to where I'm at. There's no requested demo. There's no wall behind it. It really just goes straight to this, actually. So those who, hopefully everyone, again, if you're having trouble, let us know, and you should be able to go straight. Actually, what I did, you should be able to do it in like 10 minutes. In fact, you should be able to do it while I'm doing the webinar. That's how cool it is, really. Yeah. So I think, Shane, what you mentioned here, like I agree with you. Like you're right. We should look carefully at some of these backstories here. But I like that it's already come up with things here. I also like that. I like the summary that CrewAI has done already and told me how comprehensive it is and key features behind it. there. I'm gonna go ahead just from like talk a little bit from. So the first thing I'm gonna do actually before I do anything here, actually, I'm just gonna go ahead and run it. So the great thing is once it's come up with this, you can immediately go ahead and run it. And I'm a pickleball fan, and I'm always looking at pickleball paddles. So I'm gonna use a pickleball. I know I should use something like LLMs or something more related, but I just love shopping with pickleball paddles. And Thanksgiving's Black Friday's coming up, so I'm looking at deals too here. So the great thing about it is that I just entered in the category that I did, and immediately it's going to go ahead and run it and execute it according to each of the AI agents. I love seeing this part here because I can just see, completed, what it's done, and then what each of the calls is saying here down there, like top.
Well, I think what's interesting, you and I were chatting the other day, and I was going to mention this in my slides, but I think I forgot to, is that, when typical people build an AI assistant or copilot, you typically have a prompt template and an LLM in the background, right? And some RAG in there, right? You're doing some knowledge retrieval. But as everyone can see here, when you start building agentic workflows, there can be a lot of LLM and tool calls in the background. So what felt like a simple, a chat interface is just a request and response, right? You give it an instruction and you get some response back. It's a different world when we get involved with agents. And I think that's really, in my mind, one of the areas where, kind of that speed, of SambaNova, as well as the pricing compared to, some other stuff that's out there is going to have an impact. Because you might not realize it, but if you're building pretty sophisticated agents, it might not be long before you're seeing a whole lot of tokens being used up. And the longer it takes to generate those tokens, the more expensive those tokens are. It's going to come back to you. It reminds me a little bit of the early days of AWS when people would sign up and they're like, oh, it's usage based. It's 0.001 cents an hour. This is amazing. You get the first bill for $100,000. You're like, who did what? What's going on? Like,
what happened? Like,
how did this happen?
Yeah.
So something to keep in mind that agents by their definition are chatty because they're reasoning, they're planning, they're exploring, they're verifying. So there's work to be done, as you see in the traces here.
I know you're right, and you're right. It's great, and that's what I love about CrewAI is that you can go in there and dive deeper and just see, what people came up with here. So I think this was the final completion that it did, and it came up with 3 different ones, and they even came with 3 of it down there and came up with a comparison really quickly. We've got some questions here, so I just want to address it as we're doing it. I love Martin. He says he's tried CrewAI and N8N, and he prefers CrewAI, especially if he gets more app integrations like Power BI, Tina. And I'll show some of the integrations later. Charles did ask, how do you select tools and MCP servers available to agents? One thing I'm just going to go here actually is just showcase the different tools that, and I don't think we have a lot of time to go through, but it's just, to me, CrewAI, the power of CrewAI is the number of tools. And I know, Shane, you guys are coming up with more and more integrations.
Yeah, there's more on the horizon, although what I tend to do as well is create my own. So if you do guys want to check out that workshop document later on, I know it's beyond the scope of today. There's examples in there that same interface where you typed in your prompt to build these agents, you can also tell it to create custom tools for you. And I do that. So I will say, I want a tool that will create pages in Notion for me, or I want a tool that can retrieve records from HubSpot for me. And just as you saw earlier, you get a few minutes, it's going to reason and think about it. It's going to write the code, and then it's going to tell you what it did. And then you can start using it. So any tools that aren't available out of the box, you can literally whip them up in a few seconds in the interface here.
I love that. It's so flexible. So whatever integrations you don't have or MCP servers, you can build your own tool and just quickly like add it in there like that. I mean, the power and all through a prompt, and basically, like you said here, just ask and build.
Yeah. And then we will have more expanded MCP support soon too. So we kind of have this part of our UI where there's a number of there's kind of a different types of tools. There's the open source tools that come with it, and those are usually either you just use it or you provide an API key. And then we have the enterprise tools where you typically have to authenticate, right? If you want to get into any HubSpot, SAP, whatever, you're going to have some sort of interface where you have to authenticate to use it. And we have those in there. The third pillar that's rolling around, which sounds like someone just asked about, which is great, is the MCP part, where you'll be able to register MCP servers, and then you can drag and drop those into these agents.
Wow.
So that's coming, hopefully soon.
And then, so I'm just going to, we have time for questions and answers in a bit. I just want to cover, one thing, which is flexibility of CrewAI, really. And, in each of these here, so I think we talked a little bit about choosing different models. You can see each of these AI agents are using DeepSeek v3.1, but I can go ahead and choose them and select a different model. So for example, here, SambaNova, we have a bunch of different models, and some are bigger and some are smaller than others, and some have different pricing. So for example, we know that DeepSeek v3.1 is quite a large reasoning model. What we could do is use maybe Llama 4 Maverick, or actually I'm going to choose Llama 4 Scout here. That actually is a much smaller model and much more cost effective. So the great thing within CrewAI is I can select it and then just save it, and then go ahead, and it's actually going to use this as a different model. And the other thing about it is I can just test it out here by just replaying this task only. And then now it's only just going to replay that particular, and so it's okay, I couldn't even have time to demo it because it's so fast, right? It just redid this task here on a smaller model. And I can go ahead and then do different things there. And what I'll say is, as you're looking at different models, I definitely recommend people using maybe artificial analysis, just to see and figure out which model might be best for that particular AI agent's task. Some are better at instruction following, coding, scientific reasoning, and then Agentic tool use. And you can go to something like artificial analysis and look at these different benchmarks to do it. Now, there's a ton of different benchmarks out there. So I would also look at your particular, you're in finance, you're in healthcare, look at your particular benchmark there. The other thing I would also say in terms of choosing different models are two things. One, some of them are reasoning models, so they're going to have more text output, more tokens here. And if you go to Samba Cloud here, you can see the different models that are reasoning and non-reasoning. So so those that require a little bit more thinking, you can use reasoning models. And then those that are maybe you don't need that reasoning, you can use a non-reasoning model here too, maybe DeepSeek v3.03.24. The other thing, as Shane alluded to, is cost here. So if we look at pricing here, you can see that the different models, and this is over across the board here, actually have different pricing. So something like DeepSeek R1, as Shane alluded to, it can add up over time, especially with all those different tokens. So you can use something like maybe Llama 3 or Llama 4, which is just a lot more cost effective. And then over time, as you run these different models, they're going to add up, right? If you see a similar result, but at a cheaper price, why not do it, especially if it's faster and just as accurate there.
Yeah, I mean, I still believe that, and I think we'll see a lot more of this over the next few months, is more mixing and matching of models based on agent needs, right? At the end of the day, agents, they have different needs and different requirements, and they perform different tasks. So if you have an agent that needs to, examine, multiple dimensions and criteria of products, for example, maybe we want stronger reasoning capabilities and a better way to interpret these things. But then if you get to some stage where you just want an agent that is responsible for communications and passing information along, I probably don't need DeepSeek R1 to build an agent that sends an email to someone hey, the analysis is complete. Here is a link to a page in Notion along with some highlights. Probably don't need the most state-of-the-art model to do that. So I think as time goes on, the tricky part is we can't really tell you what to use because every agent and task is different. But I would encourage folks to experiment with models and see which ones work best for you at kind of your price performance needs. If I have an agent and I ran it once with the most expensive model, and then again, with a much smaller, less expensive model, if they were 95% similar, that's probably good enough for me to use the smaller one.
Yep.
But hey, you might have a task where it's super critical that it needs to be at 100%. So then, yeah, use whatever model is needed to get there.
Yep.
So I don't think we're that big into that territory yet, but I think that's the next phase, is learning how to match the right models with the right agents based on tasks. And ultimately, that's going to require a little bit of trial and error, from everyone. We can provide some guidance. But as you mentioned earlier, you really have to try it with your agents and tasks and see how well it performs.
I love that because, and there's two things which I really want to add on to that. One, the power of CrewAI is the flexibility of doing that. Like I can just go in there and modify it. In fact, you can even modify the temperature settings here too, and the different agent settings. And that's what I love about it. And the second thing I'll talk about, Shane, is if you're doing a startup, if you're building some sort of service for a client, that's your competitive advantage because you've gone in and done that research and tried the different models. And you've built your AI agent, especially if you're serving to a customer, that you've gone in and actually modified it and really fixed it specifically for that task. And that's where I feel your competitive advantage is using these tools down there. Yeah. So anyway, I'm just gonna go. You can actually go ahead and select different. We'll just go ahead and select different models here. I'm going to select GPT OSS 120B based on this one here. Sorry. And then actually, since we're sort of running close on time here, I don't want to keep people too much. Again, once you've done this here, you can go in, select DeepSeek Scout, and then you can go in and just run the same execution here that we've done, and it's going to run through and then sort of give a different model, different output here. The last thing I just want to show, and especially in CrewAI, is that I agree. I really encourage everyone to do, before we go to questions and answers here, to try stuff out. And you don't actually have to come up with your own prompt. You can go in here and try out a bunch of different ones here that they've done. And these are like super useful. And again, these prompt templates are very straightforward and you can run through. Shane, am I missing anything before we jump into questions and answers here that we can demo?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, let's hit up the questions.
Yeah, let's just do that because this is my favorite part of it here. So I think there's some questions about can CrewAI be prompted to self-critique its agent orchestration, I guess? Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to think about that one a little bit more. I think the closest thing I can say on that is that the copilot on the left, which is where handling all the natural language, that is built on agents and actually something we call flows, which is a way to orchestrate them. So there's a little bit of dog fooding in here, and that is actually a set of agents and workflows in the background that build all this stuff for you. In terms of critiquing it, I'm not sure. I guess it depends on what you're getting at. You can enable planning and reasoning on an agent level, and that will encourage the agents to reflect on their plans and iterate them if needed. But it depends on how deep you want to get into the orchestration there.
There's another question here on, and keep those questions coming on a startup program. I think CrewAI probably has maybe something similar. I'm not going to speak for you, but Samba Cloud actually has a startup program here. So you can go to developers, an early access program where we are, we'll give out sort of credits and then showcase your achievements and then, and really bring you in as a startup here to be on our cloud.
Nice. Yeah. I like that. We're in the early stages of ours. So we accepted submissions through October that I'm currently reviewing right now and plan to announce kind of the first cohort at our conference on Thursday. So we will do it again, I'm sure. So this is kind of our first effort to identify kind of a batch of startups that we can work closely with to help them kind of get started and scale with agents. But there'll be additional opportunities down the line for that.
Yeah, let's see. What are some of your favorite use cases? For me, it's like pickleball paddles. I love doing stuff that for my mundane automation, like following up on people have contacted me, doing research on stuff. Triaging issues.
I tend to think the same thing when I build agents. I usually think about the stuff that I don't want to do because it's taking too much of my time. Competitive research was one. If you've ever had to do, thorough competitive research, it can take me days. People will throw new companies at me, new products at me, and I have to go through the documentation. I watch videos on YouTube. If I can, I'll sign into the product and experiment with it. So that was kind of one of the first crews I wanted to build, was one that could do competitive research. And then since I'm in marketing, other things had to do with HubSpot and leads, building lists and, assessing lead quality. You'd be surprised how many people come to the website and they fill out our forms with junk data for reasons I don't know why. And so that's another thing to just chews up my time. So then the other day I realized, well, why don't I build some agents that can look at these leads and identify if they're real or fake, and then give me their level of confidence in whether it's real or fake. So that's how I approach it as an individual, is I look at opportunities to delegate some of my work to something else. And I think that's probably true of, I think to a certain degree, true of our customers that go big on agents too. Sometimes they're doing net new stuff that they just couldn't do before. But other times, they're looking at, how can we make our teams more productive by automating some of this work? And I think another favorite internally here, which I think you touched on too, is the email stuff. So I do have colleagues who've been building agents that can prioritize their emails, even respond to some automatically depending on what the need is. So that tends to be a popular one internally here too.
I have a question here on question about RDU chips here. I'm just going to quickly answer that here. So thank you for asking that, and then how it compares to GPUs and other AI accelerators. We do have a blog here, so you can go out there to our page here and then look at our resources, our case studies, our videos, our white papers, and then we'll talk about how it compares a GPU to an RDU. And these are very, very specific questions to our cloud platform and our product. And I'm going to type in my email here, so you can feel free to email me if you have any specific questions or technical questions about our efficiency, our power consumption, our speed down there. But our webpage definitely has more information there here. And then I think we had a question about there was an error down there, and when we executed, I think it was on my error. I changed one of the settings on the model itself. But I managed to run it again and then execute it without the error. So that was just a small execution error on my part there when we ran the original crew here. Great. Are we missing anything here? Any questions? Somebody asked a question here, like, will a customer service agent to create medical appointments be possible using agents? Because there are many use cases. I love this scenario because my wife's a veterinarian, and it's definitely something that I've been, at least, and Shane, if you chime in, I've been experimenting with, which is, hey, when a phone call comes in, I think Shane talks about too, when a phone call comes in, how do you interact with the appointment booking solution, and then find out where a certain slot is, a certain doctor, and then put that in. And I think the power between triggers, one thing here, event-driven triggers, which you can do when an appointment comes in, and then also tool integration can make that happen, right, Shane, I think?
Yeah, no, you absolutely could. I've been working on a similar set of agents for that here. We get a lot of people that will ask for demos or request a meeting, and so we're working on agents that, well, one, assess the validity of who's coming in and asking for it. But then, yes, it can use tools. We use Google Calendar, so we can use the Google Calendar tool to find out what is the next opening available for folks. And then I think we also use Calendly. We can add that as a tool, and then we can send them an email. And then you can go farther too, to where it can respond to emails, right? So if you do book that appointment, and then they come and say, "Oh, sorry, I have to cancel. Something went on today." Instead of being like, "Okay, thank you, cancellation received," it can go back to the calendar and be like, "You know what? Our next available is at 2 p.m. next Thursday. Does that work for you?" And if they reply yes, be like, "Oh, great. I'm going to go ahead and schedule that meeting, for you and the doctor, next week." So all those things are absolutely possible. There are things that we do here, even ourselves.
Yeah. I put up a slide as we're going to sort of end. I know there's a bunch of questions coming here. Maybe we have time for one or two more here. But I put up our contact information here. So if you have any questions, feel free to email us here or contact us on LinkedIn or Twitter down there. We'll be more than happy to answer further questions. I've I have a quick question about a recommended LLM model from SambaNova to analyze YouTube content. My favorite model for that would be DeepSeek v3.1 Terminus. I think it does a really good job of reasoning and understanding and then analyzing content. Now, it's not a multimodal model, which means that the content needs to be generated in text and sent through. If you're looking for a multimodal model, which maybe does images and text, then you will need to use something like Llama 4 to analyze the YouTube content. So that's on my end here. I think we're good. Maybe a time for did we miss out any questions at all? If not, Shane, do you have any closing remarks? Again, thank you so much for attending. This is I think CrewAI and SambaNova work really well together, and I personally look forward to seeing what people build.
Yeah, no, I do. Thank you for having me on. I thought the questions were great today, so thank you to everyone that was asking these questions. I think what everyone's teasing on is the part that got me excited, about all of this is just the possibilities. And I think the best thing you can do is just to start trying things out.
Yep.
If you have an idea, someone mentioned earlier, could we do something that can automate, customer service scheduling? You probably can. So start drafting a description of what you'd like, drop in a studio, tell it what to do, set it to DeepSeek, one of the DeepSeek models that Justin had just told us, and see how it performs. Obviously, you might want to do some testing before you put it in front of your customers, but build away, right? Have fun with it, explore new things that maybe you didn't know were possible, but it turns out that with, the latest open models and agent platforms, it is possible now.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think one thing you touched on is really, this phrase is used too often, like just do it and have fun while doing it. Just build it, just do it, build it, see what happens, and try out, because it's so easy right now to go ahead and do something.
Yeah, so, it is. I think my only warning is it'll pull you in. I think when I was working on my competitive research crew, I probably spent too much time on it. But I'm also a perfectionist, so I was just obsessed with learning how to, tweak my roles and descriptions and tasks to get it closer and closer and closer to exactly how I wanted it. And I think I pretty much got there, but it requires some work, right? So if you're excited and you're willing to put a little time into it, it might amaze you just what you can accomplish if you give it the right time.
I love that. Thanks, Shane. Thanks everyone for attending. That's just going to be the end of our first Dev Talks with SambaNova and CrewAI. We look forward to seeing you next one. Shane, thank you so much for attending. This has been a wonderful collaboration webinar that we've done.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.